Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm hoping you can see me this time. I'm restarting this. I'm restarting this stream. My team. I'm getting messages popping in my screen that I wasn't on. So hopefully, if and when you guys join, let me know that you're there. And I know this is pretty early on, so if you're on this early, you're probably in the replay. Let me know that you took the time to replay. I really do appreciate the time that you guys take to replay. So give me a hashtag replay and tell me what you think. I love the interaction. It is nice to be able to see. Oh, I see some comments coming in. So we are working this time. Good to know. That is nice. Hop in and say good morning, good afternoon if you're watching the replay or if you're on a different time zone. I'm sorry, I'm going to grab my water. My throat is a little dry today, so kind of just keep tripping out on my water in my throat here. So let me know if you're on today and just give me the interactions. Again, it gets lonely on this side of the camera, and I'd like to know that I have some valuable use of my time. So hello, everybody. I hope you recharged your batteries this weekend, had a refreshing weekend. I had a busy weekend. Some weekends we just have to get things done, and that is good for our soul as well, right? Just sometimes decluttering and just cleaning out the junk in our minds and in our life is really good. It can be tiring, but it's good for us. Anything that brings you peace, right? At the end of the day. Sometimes getting there is hard, but those things that bring us peace is what we really need to put our time and attention into. Good morning, Harmony. Thank you for joining me. Um, we have a new program, Harmony, that's coming up that's going to be perfect for you. So we will be announcing that shortly as we go in. We're putting together a program that focuses on home providers that are going to be expanding into a center, or somebody who just wants to open a center from scratch, or if your center is under probably I would say 18 months old. We're starting a new program coming up that is in the works. We're just putting it together now. That's really just going to focus on baby centers or transitioning into a center's program from your home or just starting from scratch. Basically, just that foundational, let's put it together one building block at a time. That is one of our future things coming up, which we'll be talking about coming up here. Okay, so let's get to it and not waste any time. Today, I asked the question in the comments. Hopefully, the comments went through, or in the description. Hopefully, it went through on this one. I had to stop what I was doing and restart since I wasn't streaming for some reason. But I asked you guys in those comments, where do you think your happiness comes from? So oftentimes we find ourselves really unhappy in our life, in our situation, in everything around us. And we often blame it on our jobs, the people around us. For ECE leaders, you might be blaming it on your staff. You might blame it on your life situation, our spouses, our children. We don't have enough money. We don't have this or that. We blame life on our situation. And I'll be here to tell you happiness and joy does not come from your situation at all. That is something that comes from within. And that is something that you find regardless of what is happening in your life, regardless of where you are and what is going on. Life is full of good and bad. No matter what we do, there's always going to be those seasons. There's going to be those seasons where everything is wonderful, everything is falling into place as it should. And there's going to be seasons where it's not, where it's just downright hard. And most of the time, if we look at our days on a day-to-day basis, life is always 50-50, right? There's 50% bad, 50% good. There's nothing we can do. It is what it is. But we really have to be careful for where we choose to focus. Are we choosing to focus on that 50% bad or 50% good? When we choose to focus on the negative, then everything does feel huge and overwhelming. And everything really is and does become this big negative thing. So I really would like to challenge you to question, what are you focusing on? Are you focusing on the abundance in your life? Are you focusing on what is good? Or are you focusing on the negative? As leaders, we often focus on what our staff isn't doing, the fact that they aren't performing to where they are, where we want them to be. And we want change, but we often don't see how we are the reason things aren't going where they want to go, where we want them to go. And sometimes it's not so bad. Sometimes as a leader, you might be creating problems for yourself that aren't real, that aren't really there. And it's really just because you might not be used to things going well. And you may thrive in environments of negativity and basically just thriving in environments that aren't healthy. So I see too often leaders who are actually causing the disruption and the problems in their center. One of the signs of a great leader is when a leader can really look at themselves and take accountability and know when the problem is them and not their team. So if that's something you really have a hard time seeing, I really, really challenge you to step back and ask yourself, is it them or is it me? And have an honest conversation with yourself about it. Take your emotions out. For my members, I teach something that's called the management response cycle. And it really, really breaks down this concept. If you're one of my members, you can go back to the training on management response cycle. I think I've taught it twice because it's so very important, right? So basically, you want to look within yourself to see if am I making decisions based on my emotions instead of just the logical situation at hand. So in the management response cycle, I really break down how do you get to that? How do you analyze what's really happening in order to take my feelings out and see the situation for what it really is? Okay. And let me give you an example. If you're stressed out because you're already short staffed, and you're stressed out because you know it's difficult to hire, you're short, you're already running thin on staff, and let's say one of your staff members gets COVID, and you find yourself angry over the fact that this staff member has COVID, and you start placing blame on things like, well, I bet she went out without a mask, I bet she went grocery shop, I bet she did this. And once you start placing blame, I can tell you that you are thinking with your emotions and you're not thinking logically. You're letting your personal feelings dictate what is happening within your center. And you're leading from a place of emotion, not a place of logic, not where a leader should be at all. Right? If you start having these thoughts that, well, it's their fault, this is happening. Well, if they hadn't done this, then this. Yes, a lot of times people need to own things, right? Our life choices do put us in situations. And yes, some of our employees are toxic due to their life choices. I'm not going to say they're not. If somebody, on the other hand, has a hangover and can't work the next day because they chose to drink too much the night before they had to work, then that is something that they need to own. But I would be very careful, and this is where it's important to make sure you're thinking logically, right? If you really take out the emotions from your staff member who has to miss work because of the fact that they have COVID, then you're going to see it in a different light. And you're going to realize, is this an annoyance? Absolutely, it's an annoyance. Is it going to put you out? Absolutely, it's going to put you out. Is it the employee's fault? Not really. It really isn't. There are things that each and every one of us could do to prevent everything, right? There's really things that all of us could do to prevent everything, but we don't know. One of the things I always like to go back to is the person I am today has all the facts, right? Something might happen to me in my own life today. And I can tell you for a good example that's a little dramatic, but it's a good example, is my husband's death. There was a period of time where I was beating myself up because I didn't change our diets when we were in our 20s. And I mean like early 20s. I met my husband at a very young age. We were married when I turned 18. We got married. And so I realized, well, I had the power to save his life. Had I just made sure we had a healthy diet from the time we were young, I could have saved his life, right? And I had so much regret for a while over the fact that I didn't take more control over our diet and exercise from the time we were in our 20s. But that's basically when I realized that the person I am today knows the end results. I have all the facts. I know where the bad choices led, right? I know that this is the result of what happened then and a lifestyle of eating poorly. I understand that today. But the person I was 20 years ago had no clue. That girl did not have all the facts. She did not have all the information. So it's not fair for me to get mad at her because of where I am today, right? So compartmentalizing like that is very important, and placing blame on people for things really isn't that important. So yes, I hope, yes, mindset is the key. It absolutely is. So I want you guys to know that your personal happiness comes from you. One of the things I'd like to talk a little bit about today, too, is the difference between joy and happiness, which is something that I've really learned over the last 2 years with my life situation. We're not always going to be happy, and that's okay. Life is not 100% good, right? But we can't always be joyful. There is a difference between having a joyful heart and a joyful spirit than there is between happiness, right? And this lesson became acutely clear to me within the last year of my husband's life, where the year before that I was just miserable. I had lost my joy, I had lost everything. And I got a very good life coach / therapist to help me through and to realize that even though I am facing the hardest time of my life, I can still choose to be joyful. I can still find joy in the world. I can be joyful and sad at the same time, right? The problem is we oftentimes are looking for our happiness and we want to be constantly happy, right? And when we're not, when people aren't making us constantly happy, we place blame, we get angry, we decide this is out of control, my center is a mess, everything is so horrible. And we don't realize that we are the ones doing that to ourselves. It's not as bad as you think. It really isn't. It's all in your mind and how you choose to perceive things. Your emotions are your responsibility. Nobody can make you feel a certain way. Nobody can make you angry. Nobody can provoke you. Nobody can make you sad. You choose to be sad. You choose to be angry, right? When you take that power away from people and understand that this is in you, you can really take control of your life and find that joy in every circumstance, every situation. So happiness comes from you. Joy comes from you. What is going on and how you perceive things comes from you. It is your perception. It is not reality all the time. So you might think that your center is totally out of control. You might think things are horrible. You might think a specific staff member is out of control and horrible. But it may not be true. That is your perception. And it's very important for you to distinguish your perception from reality. And the way you're going to do that is by taking your emotions out, right? Your job, your spouse, your employees, your parents, they do not dictate your happiness. They do not dictate your success. You do. You as a leader, when somebody it makes you angry and you lash out at them, they did not make you do that. Okay? If you talk down to a staff member, they did not make you do that. You chose to do that. If you lost your empathy and your feeling for others, it's not because of what they did to you. You chose to allow all of the things to get to you. I know we live in very stressful times with COVID. The stress level is just through the roof. But I think it's time for us to start taking accountability. I think it's time for us to start taking accountability. Yes, it's hard right now, but you get to choose who you show up as. Are you going to accept the challenge with a joyful spirit and heart and just say, I can do hard things, let's do this? Or are you going to say, I'm going to allow this to defeat me, right? We get to choose. I lost my husband 7 months ago. And when I did, I knew I get to choose who I'm going to be a year from then, right? I'm 7 months in. And I told myself right after he passed away, I get to choose who I'm going to be a year from now. I get to write this story. Am I going to show up or am I going to let this conquer me? That was my choice, nobody else's. And that is what each and every one of us get to do. Did I feel sad? Of course I felt sad. I still have moments where it is overwhelming, but I choose whether I'm going to stay in that sadness or I'm going to pick myself up the next day and keep going. A big part of that is we need to have emotional intelligence. We need to understand and be in touch with our emotions, right? We need to honor them, but also put limits on them and let ourselves know that this is something that we need to control. We need to really put those limits on our feelings and understand when is it not logical anymore, or when do I have to start moving on? When do I need to balance these emotions so that I can show up and be who I need to be, right? So that is very, very important. So basically what I'm challenging you guys to think about today is what really needs to change. Is it really everybody around you, or is it your attitude and your perspective? Is it your thoughts, right? Are you really taking control of your thoughts and questioning your thoughts? When you look at a team member and just say, I just can't do this with them anymore. They just can't do this. I'm so tired of chasing them. I just can't. I challenge you to stop yourself and ask, is it really them? Is it really that bad? Or is it me? In the beginning, it's going to be really hard. And your brain's going to be like, of course it's really that bad. Of course it's really them. How could it be me? But I want you to really stop and ask yourself these things. Really do some self-analysis, right? Very important if you're going to be going to the next level. And be honest with yourself. You have nothing to lose. You're not declaring defeat to anybody else, right? You're just doing it within you. This is just for you. Do not let your ego overcome you. I've been studying lately different leaders that I've either admired or not admired. And I can tell you that the biggest downfall of leaders that end up falling, like people who rise up really high and then fall, then there's two things that I notice that really cause leaders to get to these heights and then fall, right? The number one thing is they lose empathy with the people around them. They stop empathizing. They stop feeling, and they lose sight of how important human capital is. They lose sight of that, and everything starts to look very dismal, right? So, number one, losing sight of human capital, losing sight of how important the people around you are. That is the number one downfall I think I've noticed as I study leaders and when they fall, what is it that makes them fall? They lose sight of the people. Number two is ego. The other thing that I've noticed that really comes into play is when leaders start to do very well, they get this ego and their pride. The pride that the ego really brings in just becomes their downfall. They allow their ego to become so big that they can't admit when they're wrong, not even to themselves. They can't admit to others when they're wrong. They basically place blame everywhere because of their ego. So just keep that in mind. If when you really start to do well, you have to be conscious of the people around you. Am I showing them the love and empathy that they deserve? Am I keeping them with you? The value of human capital is just immeasurable. There's a lot of things we can put value on, but people we cannot, and we need to stay true and loyal to them, empathetic and loving. We cannot lose our ability to empathize and show that we care. We can't lose the authentic caring. It is vital to our success. And again, our ego. If you cannot get past your own personal flaws, you're not going to make it. I have actually gone so far. This is such a huge belief for me in accountability. The thing with ego is ego stops us from taking accountability, what we need to be accountable for in order to grow and be better. Not only that, but ego also makes us go backwards because we see ourselves as almost perfect, right? I mean, to a certain extent, some see themselves as perfect. And so when you allow that to really come in, what ends up happening is you end up basically not growing and you go backwards. If you're not going up, you're going to be going down. So I've seen it too often where ego stops a person. I actually had a staff member in a employee review tell me that she thought her performance in the classroom was perfect and that there was no more room for growth because she was doing such a perfect job that, I mean, she literally said that to me. She was doing such a perfect job that she did not see any room for growth. I stopped the evaluation right there. I mean, I had areas that she could grow, but I stopped the evaluation. And I first confirmed, I really did add, like, you really think that the job that you're performing at is perfect. You do not think you could do any better. No growth. And she said, no. So I fired her on the spot. I basically gave her notice right there and then. And this was right in the middle of this was probably June of 2020 when we were in the thick of it, in the worst part of COVID. But the reason I did that is no matter how much I knew it was going to cause us some disruption in my center, I also knew if I kept her, she was going to bring us down more than anything. I'd rather be short staffed than have somebody work for me that doesn't take accountability. Because if you can't recognize when it's you and not them, then you're never going to grow and things are never going to get better and you're never going to find joy and happiness because your happiness doesn't come from how your staff behaves. Your staff's behavior comes from you as a leader. Absolutely comes from you. Again, I've told this story before, but it is worth telling you guys over and over again. There was a day about 7 or 8 years ago when I walked into my childcare center and I literally thought to myself, I need to fire every single one of these people and just start over. My staff is so horrible. I just need to let them all go. This is ridiculous. They just don't do what I want. They aren't performing to the level I want. They're calling in. They're doing this. They're doing that. Well, certain events ended up taking place that forced us into a staff meeting. And in that staff meeting, I basically asked my staff to give me some ideas and just let them speak. What came out of their mouths made me realize that I had some brilliant women working with me. And like literally same women I thought a week ago, I needed to fire the entire team. I had to have a moment with myself, a very honest talk. And I had to realize that it was me, not them. It was me holding them back. It was me causing the problems. I was exhibiting such poor leadership that it was trickling down to them. So my challenge for you today is to really ask yourself, is this really them? What really needs to change? Is it really my job? Is it really my spouse? Is it really my children? Is it really my environment? Or is this coming from me? What do I have to really dive into myself and fix before I can fix all of these around them? Do I need to put my ego in check? Do I need to really gain some emotional intelligence? Do I need to really just start learning how to analyze my thoughts and question my own thoughts, which I think everybody needs to question their thoughts, you guys. Everybody should be validating and making sure that you're not letting your thoughts run wild and you're not coming up with stories that are not true. How are you going to do things from here on out? How are you going to see things differently? Realize that your perception may be skewed. Remember, we as humans create stories around the information that we have. We take bits and pieces of information and we create stories around them, and they're not always accurate. Again, another dramatic example, just because the last 3 years of my life have been pretty dramatic with the events that have happened. When my husband was dying, the doctor basically had taken him off dialysis, and he told my husband he had about a month, but I knew I knew he wasn't going to live more than a week. I just knew there's no way his body could survive without the dialysis. So at that time, I started making phone calls, and I called his stepbrothers, and we hadn't seen his stepbrothers in a couple of years since he had gotten sick. My husband went into hiding when he went sick, and he didn't want anyone to know what was going on, and basically made me promise not to tell anybody. So unless you were very close, most people didn't know what was happening. When I got a hold of his brothers, they basically said, oh, we'll come next weekend. I told him that he was really sick and he was dying. And they just kind of were nonchalant about it. And I just told him, no, you need to come now. I don't think he's going to make it till next weekend. And they came. They came. And sure enough, my husband died the next day. My brother-in-laws, they were Ronnie's stepbrothers, they came over, I think it was the following day, and they apologized to me and told me how sorry they were, because they thought that the reason we'd become distant was because we just thought we were too good for them. My husband comes from a very poor background. And so since we were doing well, they basically thought that Ron had pushed them away because he was, he just thought they were beneath him, to be honest, is what they basically told me. And they now live with a lot of regret, right? Because they took the pieces of a story that they had and they came up with their own narrative around that story. And that's what every one of us do every single day. You are being put in front of people. You know half the story, and you're coming up with the narrative. You're making up the rest based on not having all the information. And most of the time when we do that, we are not being kind, right? So I challenge you to really question yourself and your perspective. This is something I've been pretty good at, but that incident with my brother-in-laws really opened my eyes to how detrimental that could be. They lost a couple years with my husband because of their judgment, because they allowed their personal feelings, their emotions, their own shortcomings, their own personal biases create a narrative in their head. And when I say their own shortcomings, I don't mean literal, I mean their perceived shortcomings, what they have personal issues about, right? Not what was real, what they are self-conscious of. They projected that and literally lost a couple of years of life with their stepbrother, who they'd grown up with since they were very, very little, as far back as they could remember, because they constructed an inaccurate story in their head. So I really challenge you guys. What kind of inaccurate stories are you allowing to steal your happiness? What kind of inaccurate stories are you constructing in your own mind that are basically holding you back? Because I guarantee they're there. So I hope that was helpful for you guys. I hope that'll help you guys just really start realizing, I know post-COVID things are so hard, but they don't have to be. I really want you guys to really hear this. You are choosing your own misery so often. So often things are not as bad as they seem. You're choosing to see it that way, and we can choose different. I hope you guys can join me again, and I will be back in about 20 minutes. I'm finishing up my enrollment boot camp that we're doing right now, the preschool enrollment boot camp. And I know I'm shifting gears really quick here. I just glanced down at the time. So sometimes I get off on these tangents. So sorry about that. But I hope you guys can join me. I will be coming back live again in about 20 minutes. We are finishing up today. And just as a reminder, tomorrow we are having a live closed door Zoom session. So if that's something you would like to be a part of, please let my team members know. Let them know that you would like the link to the Zoom. And if you'd like to just pick my brain, ask me some questions. We also have opened the cart to our membership program. And we do have a couple things going on right now. if you are one of the first 5 people to sign up during this promotion that I have going on right now, I'm actually going to do I'm going to include a team building Zoom meeting with your team. That is something I don't offer very often to basically, it's something that isn't a part of my membership. I will come in and train your teams. I do come in person, or I will do it via Zoom. And normally it is not cheap to get my time anymore. So if that's something you're interested in, first 5 people to sign up today will actually be able to get me to come in and do a team building, a mindset training with your team. So kind of similar to what I do here, but it's a bit different. It's a lot more intensive and more geared towards your team, where you just basically bring me onto Zoom, project me, and I do a meeting. There's several different ways. We can talk about the tactical. So sign up today if you would like that to become a part of our membership. We are still having an open cart today to join, so please be sure to join us. Again, every Tuesday, we do meet for my open office hours, which you have access to me and my team to just pick my brain, ask me some questions, and we just really work through that. On Thursdays, I train every Thursday. This really, like what you guys have seen with the enrollment boot camp, I go into in-depth trainings on a lot of things, everything there is when it comes to onboarding your staff. How do you lead? How do you have a tough conversation? Do employee reviews? How do you deal with parents, parent orientations, all of it. There's just trainings on all that business structure and the operations of your child care center. So make sure that you tell your concierge. If you don't have one, let us know. If you haven't been a part of the enrollment boot camp and you don't have a concierge, let us know in the chat so you can get one of my team members to help you out through all of this. So I hope to see you guys at, it's actually 10 a.m. Pacific time. I'm not sure what time zone you guys are on, but at 10 a.m. Pacific time. I hope to see you guys in a few minutes. Have a great rest of your day.